Andy, it was the last day of school in Charlotte yesterday. So
Oh,
summer's officially here. I got all the kids out. Well, the two kids that are still at home are done.
yeah,
Doing some freshman orientation and college prep for the oldest one.
yeah,
Summer's kicked off, different schedules now. I don't have to worry about getting people up at a certain time or making sure they're up
yeah.
and traffic on the road going in and out of work is going to be a little bit easier. So
That's
here we
exciting. Well, congratulations to you and your daughters and your wife. It's always a major moment as the school year ends and you move into the new phase, especially this year with your high school graduate. So very exciting. And it is exciting because it really does bring summer on. There's something to the sound of kids' voices in the neighborhood, running around and playing in the summer and just having a good time. And you're right, getting those buses off the road is a blessing because somehow I always end up behind the one or two that want to make 35 stops on a one lane road, when I've got to be somewhere. So
Yep.
exciting time. So nice, nice. Happy June 11th, Dave, as we celebrate the start of summer for you guys.
Yeah. Did you, so when, like, speaking of my oldest one going off to school, my youngest one is now like, I want her room and I want the upstairs room and such. Did you ever go through, like, I know you got some siblings and such, but like, did you ever have when it didn't, like, when I remember when my older brother went away to school, I didn't really care. Nothing changed in my life, but
Yeah. Yeah, we did a lot of proactive negotiations on things in our house, like knowing that certain things would come up. We sort of talk about it ahead of time. But when it came to rooms, just as it was when we moved to the place we live in now, which has been about almost 11 years. Um, my youngest son started in one room, which was the smallest room in the house. So he had his eyes on like, well, how do I get a bigger room? But then we were able to move him to the basement, which actually made my eldest sort of like, hey, like, why does he get to live in the basement like a king? And I'm up here next to you guys. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So everybody's been more or less content since for the last few years. But now, now that they're moving on, I've got these two bedrooms, and neither of my sons are here, and it's just different, So yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun to watch kids. We had that growing up. There was a room in the basement of our townhome that was like the coveted eldest uh, child's room, and so three of the four of us rotated through that room, ending in me as the youngest. But that was like my pad, so I had like the basement room, the cool room, the basement to myself. So yeah, I think it's a natural part of kids growing up wanting whatever the choice room is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always fun. Always fun. All right, Andy, let's get into some things here on a Wednesday.
All right,
Let's start with football.
let's
I
do
mean, we
that.
hadn't talked football in a while, and we had a big, I guess, off-season workouts are beginning, getting rookies in and all that other stuff. We're very close to getting things really kicked off. But the big story, I don't know if it is even a big story. It was kind of like the when it ever happened story is Aaron Rodgers did ultimately sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were in desperate need of a quarterback. They'd put all their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers baskets. They were just waiting for Aaron to sign, and he finally signed. I think it's $13 million for a year. Good move, bad move for the Steelers, Andy.
Bad move, like terrible move. I think Aaron Rodgers is not going to be good. There's other Aaron Rodgers news too, by the way, we should talk about. But I think Aaron hasn't had like a really productive season. You could argue his last season in Green Bay was pretty good until Kirby Joseph ended it miserably in Lambeau with that great interception, which was one of my greatest football moments of all time. But he hasn't had like a bang out season in a while. His time with the Jets was terrible. Injuries, crappy football, bad team dynamics. The Steelers are a hard team to read. Like they're hard to figure out, are the Steelers going to be any good or not? And they're in a really hard division. I think you bring in Aaron Rodgers, he's probably not going to be great. I mean, he's probably not going to be great. He's just getting older. It gets harder every year as you're in your 40s. He's trying to keep up. He hasn't played really well. And then he brings, unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers. And so you look at the Jets with Robert Saleh, like that was a guy who, when he was on the 49ers sideline, like he was so cheerful and happy and energetic, and his players loved him. And you saw him with Aaron Rodgers, and it was just like terrible. Like the energy was so bad. Mike Tomlin, another players coach who players they might not love him the same enthusiastic way that they do with Robert Saleh, but they play for him, they grind for him, they respect him. He drives them. Aaron Rodgers is going to bring his energy to Mike Tomlin's team. I don't think that's going to go well. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a bad mix. I think it's bad for the Steelers. I'm hoping it's curtains for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those Jets teams, they had a lot of offensive weapons, and they even had Rodgers like offensive coordinator, like
Yeah,
the guy he worked well with. And you had a really good defense on the Jets. And yet that none of that mattered because I think what he brings with him is just really craziness. Like he mentioned this week or something. It's like Tomlin's my soul coach or whatever it is. I'm like, what the fuck are we, like, what are we doing here? What does that mean? So, always fascinating stuff on the Aaron Rodgers front. I don't see how this moves Pittsburgh anywhere closer. Like they had a good year last year. They were 10-3 at one point, or maybe it was 10-3 at one point. It went up 10-7, and then they lost really bad in the first round of the playoffs. I just don't see how like Pittsburgh went in on a over 40-year-old quarterback. They didn't really do much more to improve their team. Uh, I, I think Mike Tomlin is a great coach. He's had 18 years of non-losing seasons. He only coach in history to not have a losing season. I don't know. It's hard to see how they have a winning season with Aaron Rodgers here, Andy. So
yeah, yeah. But you know what? Look, I agree with you 100%. I don't know what a soul coach is, but but I like Tomlin. I don't mind the Steelers, and it's a tough, hard grinding division in the AFC North. So like I don't wish ill on him. He annoys me. I don't wish it'd be great to see him do well, to be honest. Like at his age, bouncing around now in a division I don't care about. It'd be great if he does do well. And if somebody can get it done with Aaron Rodgers, Mike Tomlin might be that guy because he's just been able to consistently win year after year with, I mean, a very different Steelers team, right? It wasn't just him and Big Ben, but it's been him,
yeah, yeah,
a variety of quarterbacks. Some of them really stink. He's gotten it done. At the end of the day, they've gotten back in the playoffs time and time again. They've had 10 wins time and time again. Maybe they've done something here and they bring him in. I will say this, I have a chance to visit the Steelers facility and talk to the staff there. They love that owner. They love working for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They really enjoy the team. And so I'm hoping Aaron Rodgers brings a good, positive Aaron Rodgers to it. And look, on that note, David came out yesterday as well that Aaron went and got married on the sneaky sneak. Aaron Rodgers went and got married, low key, quiet wedding, came out. I think it was on the Pat McAfee show where he revealed that. So he's now a married Aaron Rodgers. Maybe that brings some balance into his life and his universe, and maybe it's a different guy that shows up on the football field this season. Maybe there's a little bit of humbling in sort of what happened the last couple of years, and maybe he's going to play differently. So, as much as he annoyed me the most because he's on the Green Bay Packers and used to win against the Lions. Honestly, as I approach 50, Dave, and I look at a 40-something-year-old quarterback, good luck, Aaron Rodgers. Do well. Don't be a jackass, and we'll see where it goes.
yeah. We'll see where it goes. I just have to wonder is we look back at I'm really struggling with like the Pittsburgh Steelers, this really good franchise. I mean, they
Yeah,
have been really model of consistency has over since Ben Roethlisberger started his decline. They really have not, I guess they tried with Kenny Pickett and that really failed famously, but that was a bad quarterback draft and they reached for Kenny
yeah,
Pickett. He wasn't a great quarterback coming out of college. And it's hard, it's like I really see like this is a tipping point for this organization because they're not invest they just for 5 years now they have not invested in the right quarterbacks and they keep trying to find these fixums.
yeah.
And look, even if Aaron Rodgers has a great season, say they go to the and win the first round of the playoffs, maybe even go to the AFC Championship, like what's the next year going to look like? Is Aaron Rodgers like he's even older and
Yeah.
they don't have a quarterback in the queue to really pull in here. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. So
Yeah, I think this was a patch 'em up NFL quarterback season. The draft quarterbacks weren't there. The free agents, there wasn't like super strong candidates are out there, right? Russell Wilson moved, Aaron Rodgers moved. So I think the Steelers are building, trying to put something together, and I think he's a band-aid. Get him through this year,
Yeah.
do as well as they can. We'll see where it goes, but hey,
Yeah.
good to be talking football.
Yeah, next year is going to be a huge quarterback class.
Yeah,
I mean, there's 8 to 10 quarterbacks that people are just really raving about. So we'll see how that works. But Andy, good to be talking football for sure. And I think let's introduce that, starting let's start next week. We're going to start breaking down the coaching moves in one segment, maybe two a week or so until the NFL season starts. Let's see how let's give our opinions on where that is. Because Andy, we are back so close to the cusp of the NFL or of NFL football.
yeah.
Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna stay on the sports topic just for one more second here because I don't want to talk about our last topic at all, Andy. So I'm just gonna stay here. So Mama Jabor, skip ahead another 7 minutes. Sorry about that. But yeah, Andy, we have the NBA draft. We have the NBA championships going. The NHL championships or finals are going on right now.
Yeah.
NHL. And so exciting times, but the ratings for basketball have come in for these first two games. And Indianapolis, OKC, two not prime things, while Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP on Oklahoma City, he's the MVP of the league. He's still not one of the top recognizable stars.
Yeah.
The ratings are terrible for the NBA right now. But you have the NBA draft coming up. You have the NHL playoffs happening. Connor McDavid for the Edmonton Oilers is like the best. Like he's Gretzky level of a type of player. He's on the possibly going to win a championship. Florida, of all teams, is in their third Stanley Cup Finals in 3 years, third
Yeah.
straight. They could be back-to-back champions. There's a lot of good stories here, but it doesn't seem like we have any buzz at all for some of these sports anymore. Other than football. Like continues to dominate. And these other sports, they've got their core fans. It's just not the wide mass appeal anymore.
Yeah, man, I think that's big. I think people that love the games. But I think there's a couple of challenges. One that people aren't sitting behind the on the couch watching
Yeah.
TV like they used to, right? I mean, when we were growing up and there was a major sports event, whether it was college football or the NBA Finals or like whatever it was, like that was it. Like that was the big thing to watch. Now it's like, hey, that can be on. I can track the scores on my phone while I watch YouTube, watch TikTok, read an article. Like I don't think people are as locked in as they have been in the past. And I think that hurts when, especially with hockey and basketball, as sort of fun as a 7 game series is, it's like it's 7 games. That's like 21 hours of sitting on your ass watching the sport possibly. It's a lot of time. And it's like, okay, if I miss game 3, do I really care? People will watch. When there's a potential championship on the line, people will start dialing back in, right? When it's game 6, game 7, people will watch some more. I'm sure the ratings will come up for those like potential winning games. But it's like it's game 2, like, all right, somebody's going to win. Don't care. It doesn't matter. There's 3 or 4 more games to go. I don't think people are just hyped up about it. That's again where football wins because it's one game. Like your team's going to live or die that Sunday or Thursday or Friday or whatever day it ends up being played on. But it's a one game a week and it's one playoff game. And so you've got to watch it because it's everything. And so I think it just calls people in differently than these ongoing series do. And like you said, like while we know some of these names, it's not like the household recognition of Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan or Larry Bird or a host of other players, in more modern times. But some of those just names that everybody knew back when they were watching every major game.
So this brings up a question, Andy. So, like, obviously, the NFL 17 game schedule, 18 games. It's ultimately going to be 18 game schedule. You have one round of the playoffs, and then you have the Super Bowl, of course. I mean, you have the rounds of playoffs and then the Super Bowl. It's one game though, one game, and that takes it. In every other sport, it's best of 5, best of seven kind of series. And the thought is they play longer seasons, right? 80 games, 81, 82 games for NHL and NBA, 162 games for baseball. If you go to just one game, that could potentially the weaker team could win. You know, the team that won 100 games in baseball could lose that first game and they're out. You know, is that best for the sport? And you know, I get the argument where, and this happened, the LA Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants a couple years ago both had won over 100 games.
Yeah,
And because of the way the MLB playoffs were set at the time, it was a one game wild card game. And whoever lost that game was out. And so San Francisco lost. A 100-win season is out the door. And some people are like, well, that negated the regular season and they didn't get the advantages and benefits of having multiple games. I kind of think when everything is on the line for one game, you're going to get the interest. You're going to get the market. But the owners don't want to give up that gate. You know, they don't want to give up that income coming in from, potentially three home games or four home games
oh
during a
yeah,
7 game season.
yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure they don't want to. I don't think. I mean, it's huge. Like that's everything you're talking about potentially. In a playoff run, you're talking about what?
Millions of dollars.
Yeah, no, maybe millions, 15 games, 16 games potentially at home. I mean, that's a big part of your season. Like that's, I can't see them moving away from that. There might be a point where the players pressure, and maybe players would rather do like a 5 game series, like dial it back a little bit, like a little less court time, a little less rink time. I could see that, and I think you could make the argument that it could be good for the game, like make each game matter more, right? But if something like that happens, we're going to see ticket prices go up even higher. It's already really hard to take your family to a major sporting event, let alone a playoff event, right? So it's a trade-off. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, while the fans want to see whatever, we want to see the big game, we want to see the high-profile matchups. For the owners, like I said, it's a huge amount of revenue, and they want to make money, right? They buy
Yeah.
these very expensive teams, they want to make money, and so to change the format, is really going to come at a big hit. And that's not what they bought, that's not what they paid for, So it's a tough situation, but again, I think this is why the NFL has really just dominated pro sports. It's got a winning formula, and it really works.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll wrap up this, but I will note there is a developmental international basketball league that's being discussed where they have the stars
Yeah,
from the NBA join these international teams and then they play international games. Maybe they'll play like a series of games in Singapore. Then they'll go to Europe somewhere or Brazil or something, and they'll play in these clusters where all the teams play. They'll maybe do some other events around there. So
yeah.
I think it's just like the latest gimmick. I don't know. It's hard to see like where's the money making opportunity, but I think players do get sick of these like 82 games on a basketball player is a lot of work. 162 games for a baseball team, that's a lot of work. And I mean that breaks down your body. And so I think they're looking for alternatives, but man, it's tough. So
It's a tough balance. We can come back and talk to that balance a little bit more later. Like you see that in the world of pro soccer, right now to get ready for the Club World Cup, which is in many ways super exciting. And it's here in the US, it's super exciting to watch, but at the same time, like the big players don't come out because there's too many
yeah.
games, too many tournaments. So we'll come back and revisit that topic. But we'll,
Yeah, always fun. So talking about manufactured events, let's talk about what's happening in LA. Still, there's some protests and demonstrations. The mayor in LA did declare a curfew
yeah,
last night. This seems to be, look, I'm not saying that like there weren't real protests and demonstrations at all. I'm not saying that at all, but it seems like in scale, there were probably more reporters and probably more National Guard members than there were actually protesters. But the other part, and so like were there more, was the media drumming this up to be more? But the other on the flip side, is the president whose numbers continue to go down, who continues to struggle on virtually all fronts of his political agenda. He still doesn't have a budget. He's still going to get less from it. He's had a big fallout with Elon Musk, who is now regretting his tit for tat with Trump in the media. His tariff plan, even though they brought in, they claim billions of dollars, none of that is being reflective in any way, shape, or form
Yeah.
for the American people. A lot of things on the president's agenda are not going very well. Ukraine still is bad. And now he's got the woke, bad city of Los Angeles, Andy. And you read the Trump tweet or the Trump truth or whatever he calls
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
on Monday. Uh, I think he's manufacturing this, and I think Gavin Newsom's using it to his advantage too, to kind of prop up what he wants to do, run for president in 2028. So
Yeah, I mean, look, the we've seen real like protests and riots in this country, right? We've seen, I mean, we saw Ferguson, we saw Minneapolis after, make
LA after Rodney King, right?
LA after, yeah, I mean, after major events, like serious issues, we saw cities and then solidarity protests erupt around the country in protest. And some of those got like bad. Like they're and what happens when there's protests as they escalate and resources moved around, then you get elements of organized crime and you get, others that come in and cause more trouble than the protests in and of themselves, right? This is not that. As much as the president wants to make it sound like LA is burning, it's not, right? First, we've got to look at like there wasn't a murder of somebody. This was the president launching a very aggressive military-like action in making his ICE arrest. And on that note, you should pause. Federal agents shouldn't be covering their faces and being vague about who they are and completely militarized to go and arrest like a dishwasher, right? Because it escalates the situation to such a high level. It's just unnecessary. Just like we want our police to sort of use the minimal force necessary when making a stop because we want to keep the situation manageable. The president deliberately has used aggressive tactics to raise the tensions, right? So as you said when you're opening this, manufacture situation, avoidable situation, right? You can make the arrest in a million different ways. So we started that. And so then we saw protests in response, but they were, for the most part, peaceful protests. They were protests, but they were peaceful protests. People weren't causing, wild damage and looting. Like we haven't seen that. It just hasn't happened. It's not reality. There's been some. There's been some, but like minimal. Not. And then you bring in the National Guard, pre-planned event. You bring in the Marines. We should not have untrained service members trying to collect riot operations. It's a formula for disaster. Not safe for protesters. Not safe for the service members. It puts them in harm's way unfairly. That is not their job, right? So it's just creating this very volatile and dangerous situation with nonsense rhetoric, right, coming from not just the president, but the key leaders in the departments that are executing this mission. And it's just creating tension and a false reality that does not reflect the situation on the ground, right? And so now, I mean, LA's pretty calm. There was a curfew last night. There were protests. I mean, protesters are out there for sure. And they're right to be out there protesting because we're seeing some pretty wild, aggressive, heavy-handed actions from the president and his team. And he's doing things in a way that really disrespect our federal system. Because think what you want of Gavin Newsom, for the president to direct the National Guard without coordinating with the governor. We have not seen that in recent history, right? When federal troops went into Minneapolis, it was at the request of the governor, not by the discretion of the president of the United States. That is a very dangerous action. Again, Dave, the biggest frustration of all of this, while these tactics are being used today and under the cover of getting immigration under control, when we allow the president to take these types of actions, we will see this type of heavy-handed response again in the future against non-immigration targets. Like that's what we're setting ourselves up for. And that should make people petrified.
Yeah, and I think again, I mean, Trump's rhetoric these now is like, I'm going to liberate Los Angeles and all of that stuff. That's just adding more fuel to this. And I think the people of Los Angeles say, well, liberate from what? I
Yeah.
mean, liberate from you. Like we need you. But again, it's these terms that he uses. And I think it's this is Trump's way of saying, let me get the eyes off everything else because it's not going well. Here I'm going to show my force. I'm going to show my authoritarian activity by doing this. Now, Andy, there is supposed to be this Saturday. I think we all know that there's a military parade going on. Are you going in for that one, Andy? Are you going to
I,
go?
I will be somewhere else,
Yeah,
not at that protest. I will be somewhere else.
but there will be. They're calling it No King's Day, Andy, for
Yeah.
Saturday,
Yeah.
and this is where apparently, as reporting is going, over 1,000 different protests around the world, big cities and small, rural areas and elsewhere. So it's going to be interesting to see. The American people are clearly not happy. They're clearly voicing their opinions on this, and we'll see what the response is on this. Is Trump going to liberate all the cities in America from these woke ideologies? We'll have to see. But I find it convenient that when things are going really poorly for the president, we have a new manufactured crisis here. Now, not this is not to say there wasn't something that triggered some of this, but he has gone full bore into this, sending 700 active duty Marines
Yeah.
into a U.S. city.
Yeah.
Like Hegseth, I wouldn't be. Are we going to see Hegseth out in riot gear? I want to see it. I want to see him out in fucking riot gear because he's so fucking hua, Andy.
He's
So
so cool. So, I mean,
what a
David,
fucking douchebag.
it's uh it's really frustrating to see this happening on American soil. And the question I keep asking myself, and this is a little off topic, and we'll come back and revisit this, but as I look what the president is doing, right? And I'm not trying to be like ridiculous in saying this, but look what's happening in Ukraine. Nothing. Like no progress. It's gotten only far worse, right? Putin's aggression is far worse than it was before Donald Trump took office. We've pulled out of partnerships, friendships, relationships around the world, right? America's leaving the world stage in many respects, opening it up for Russian meddling. You look at our alliances, the worst they've been. You look at the tariff situation and the chaos of all of this, not good economically, not good. America turning inwards, taking military troops against Americans. And I paused and asked myself yesterday, I was like, has Donald Trump done anything that Russia wouldn't like? Is there
Yeah.
anything happening right now? The way we're treating our own citizens, the authoritarian tactics, dividing Americans, like this, ratcheting up the tension. There's nothing I can look at and say, like, you know what, this is a poke in the eye to Russia. America's standing strong. Everything is exactly what Vladimir Putin would love to see America doing. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a Russian agent. He might be. I'm not saying that Putin is orchestrating these things at all. I'm just saying, man, like if I was Russian, I was looking where the United States is today, and I'm looking at LA right now. I'm thinking, this is a dream. This is the dream administration for me. I couldn't be happier, and that frustrates the living hell out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. It's like these are things that we see in other countries, not here in the United States, but yet
Here we
here
are.
we are. And again, you have to believe, like we'll talk about this. Let's flag it for maybe next week or something. But again, these influence operations, they're real. Like these bots that are online, they're real. Back in 2016, how they were getting things in, the influence of US elections and even the UK elections, the Brexit campaign, it's well documented. There's a lot of evidence that supports it, right? That's real and it's happening every day. And we need to be, as a country, more informed, better read, better educated. And we talked about this. We have to get off these 6-second sound bites and these prep rallies that the president is going to and talking about anti-woke agenda and liberating cities. The Secretary of Defense going in and saying we're not gonna, speak into a crowd of military members about we're against the woke agenda. That kind of bullshit, that's propaganda.
Yes,
That's what that is.
exactly
And
that is.
and we have to fight against that, but that's coming from our own leaders. their responsibility. They have to be held responsible, and the way we do that is with our voice. Again, whatever. So,
Yeah, no, no, you're 1,000% right on all of that, Dave. And we do need to come back and talk about something because it's really it's not who America is, and it's really
right.
frustrating. And you do we have to make our voice heard. So ultimately, you're right. I mean, the president's going to have this big great. And look, Dave, you and I love the Army, right? I'm happy to celebrate the Army. I'm not happy to see the military paraded through the
Fuck
streets,
no, man. Fuck
right? I
no.
mean, like that's not what I want to see. That's not necessarily it's not honoring our history. Like, there's a million other ways to do it. So like we love this country, but this isn't the right way to do it. And so I'll be out on Saturday, but I'm not going to be out celebrating the president's birthday parade. I'm going to be raising my voice with others. I'm going to be carrying a U.S. Army flag, and I'm going to be out there saying, "This is not my country. This is not what I want to see in my United States of America." And I think it's important that we raise our voices. It's just a crazy time, and we have to say no. We have to put our foot down and say, like, we do not approve of this bullshit because once we do, when we accept and we bow down, we accept it. And we simply can't do that. We simply can't do that.
And then again, it's the well, I didn't think it was going to happen to me type of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Not here. But Dave, something else we're going to come back and talk about maybe next week because I think it's related to all of this. In the president's comments yesterday, talking about sending flag burners to jail for a year, an issue he's brought up before, and I think it's an interesting topic to get into because it's the same line and rhetoric just being extended further out, at the potentially the cost of our freedoms as Americans. So maybe that's another topic to come back and talk about.
We definitely can. All right, Andy. Good topics today. Mama Jabor, sorry, two sports topics for you. We're trying not to be hateful people on this
Okay.
podcast. We want to have a fun time. So, Andy, maybe let's talk about, hey, we've got some big movies coming up. Fantastic Four, Superman,
Oh,
less than a
yeah.
month away now.
Okay.
So maybe we'll talk some pop culture movies and shows. I'm watching another pretty good TV show right now, so we'll catch up on some of that. All right, Andy, with that, I'll catch up with you on Friday.